right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hey Maggie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited. I feel like we have so much synergy, like you're a new friend, and I just saw that we have like a lot of, I feel like we're very aligned in how we look at things in terms of like health and fitness and stuff. So how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. We were just talking before about how cold it is. So I'm
Yeah.
adapting. I feel like I've been traveling a lot lately too, so I'm like constantly adjusting to all different temperatures. But here, the temperature just dropped really quickly.
Yeah.
We had a whole heat wave, and now all of a sudden we're in 60-degree weather, which seems like we're in the tundra for Southern California.
Yeah. I mean, in San Diego too, I think even last week it was like pretty hot, and then over the weekend it started raining and now it's just really cold.
Really cold.
Yeah.
So you are a fitness and life coach and fellow podcaster as well. Tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get into fitness and then life coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first got into fitness because I wanted to lose weight and look better, just like a lot of people.
Right.
And when I finally started my fitness journey, ended up actually with an eating disorder because I was just like starving myself and doing cardio for hours at the gym and restricting my food because I thought that was the only way that I could get the body that I wanted. So after I overcame that eating disorder, got back to this balanced lifestyle and, like finally got the dream body, I realized that I still wasn't happy. Like
Mhm.
I had the body, but like now what? So so then
Isn't
I
that funny? I know like the like that. I feel like that's pretty common, and it's common with a lot of things, not just like physical pursuits, but like we get the dream car, we get the dream house, like, and then they're like, okay, now what? I'm supposed to be happy, right? It's supposed to be like a light switch. And it
yeah,
doesn't work like
like you think you're gonna be happy, but once you get there, you're just like, is this it? So after I got my dream body, I realized that something in my life was still missing, and I had to figure out how I could stop relying on these external things like my body to make me happy. So then I dived deeper into personal development, and I found that in order for us to be truly fulfilled, we have to master four areas of fitness. So we have the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And that is what I talk about on my podcast. That's what I coach women on in my programs so that they can really live that life that they really want to live without trying to fill an internal void with something outside of themselves.
I so love it. So I have a show. It's called Wim What is Movement? And that's what we explore. We explore the healing power of movement and how movement helps people to heal emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I absolutely love that. And I think it's really interesting though that you felt like you found that kind of journey kind of after your physical journey. I always say that I feel like most people do get into fitness for aesthetic reasons. I think there's like kind of a backlash on that. There's been
Mm-hmm.
a real pushback, and we have this whole rise of the body positivity movement, and which I have opinions on that as well. But I feel like I never want to disparage it because I think that it's kind of the gateway to personal development. So I'm really curious how you feel about this. Like, I don't think personally, I have experienced that. I don't think it's really possible, or maybe it is possible, but very few people really enter, a fitness journey and don't end up realizing that there's a whole personal development journey there to be had as well. How what are your thoughts for yourself personally and for other your clients and other people you've seen?
Yeah, I definitely think that when you do get that dream body, you realize that it wasn't even that goal that you wanted to reach all along that was going to make you happy. It's the person that you've become on this journey, and that person that you're becoming, that requires a lot of mindset work, a lot of mental and emotional strength to actually get to that dream body. So, with fitness is rarely about what to eat and how you work out. Like, we know that you just gotta be in a caloric deficit to lose weight. You you gotta eat more to build muscle. Like, people know that already, but why don't we ever do that? Why do we have such a difficult time? And I think that's because we don't have the mental aspects of that to keep us going. Because fitness is a lot more than just, let's eat some broccoli and eat some chicken and rice. Like, we already know, but why do we still have an obesity epidemic? Because people don't have that mindset that it takes to work on these goals.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And what do you think it is about the that fitness journey that teaches people to do that? Because it's not easy, right? So you would think that most people would, rather than like you getting your dream body, why not just say, okay, great, like I'm happy. Why dig deeper? What do you think it is about going on that journey that makes people want to continue to work on themselves?
I honestly think, I mean, for me, it feels good when you keep on working on yourself and you keep on reaching the next goal. And I've talked to a lot of people as well. It's like once you reach that goal, you're happy for a second, but then you're already looking forward to that next goal. And I think we really get a lot of satisfaction from that growth process of actually reaching the goal rather than getting there. Because when you actually get there, you realize that nothing in your life has really changed. So I think we really just get the enjoyment of keep on going. And I was talking to someone the other day, and we were kind of making the analogy of, if this was a game, you just keep on leveling up and you kind of get like a dopamine hit every time you reach your goal and you're like, hey, now it's time for the next level.
Like you're on the video game, you get to the next you kill
Yeah.
another creature, you go to the next level. I totally relate to that, but I think there is like a challenge in that as well, because we can get caught up in this cycle of chasing, the destination
Hmm.
um syndrome, where we're constantly chasing what's that next goal that we can conquer, what's that next thing that we're searching for, and that can be, a void in of itself. So how do you, for you personally, or how do you advise people to keep that in check, that to really be working on themselves, and they're not, because you were saying before about it being like not chasing something external. And in a
Hmm.
sense, although now you're putting work in, you're still chasing something external. And you may, you're like a hamster on a wheel. You might never get to where you really want to be. You may get that goal, you may get that dream body, that dream house, whatever it is, that max back squat or whatever it is. But then what, right? So how do you really do that work and find personal fulfillment through it, as opposed to constantly chasing that next
Mm,
goal?
right. So what I tell people is that in order for this to be a sustainable thing, this change that you want in yourself has to come from a place of love. So if you are trying to change your body because you hate your body so much and you hate your current life, that's why you want to get to that next goal, it's not going to be sustainable, first of all, and then you're constantly on that chase of that next best thing. But if you come from a place of love, like if you already say that I already love myself and that is why I'm going to make these changes, and these changes are coming from love, not only is it sustainable, but I really believe that it's the only way that you can make a real lasting change. Because with people on their fitness journeys, people go on these diets all the time, and they don't last because they do it as a way of almost hating themselves so much that they want this change so badly and they're chasing after this thing, and they realize that this journey, it's so difficult. That's why they start quitting, and that's why so many people don't make it. But if you are doing this genuinely because you love yourself and you're okay with taking this slow and you're okay with enjoying this journey, you're going to make some real lasting change, and you don't get stuck in that cycle of constantly chasing.
Yeah, no, I so agree with that. But that's a lot easier said than done, right? I
Mhm.
think self-love is it's become very trendy. People talk a lot about self-love, and we have, I feel like along with that comes a barrage of advertisements for spa treatments and like mani pedi and indulgences. And personally, I don't actually really think that that's self-love at all. Not to say that we never need those things. We do, and I'm a big fan of
Mhm.
them. Not to say they're not great, but I don't know that that's really self-love. So how does someone find that? And do you think that the process can help them, or do they have to start first? Or yeah.
Yeah, so there is a difference between self-care and self-love. So I think when we talk about self-care,
And I
that's
would actually even argue that those things aren't even always self-care. Like for some people they are, and for some people they actually need a little more tough love as self-care. So
yeah. Yeah, so, when we talk about self-love, it's not just let's get our nails done, let's get our hair done. That's not self-love. Self-love comes from within, and is something that you can't seek from outside of yourself. Like again, if you're trying to seek something from outside of yourself, that's not self-love. And self-love is really diving into the deepest parts of yourself, like maybe the darker parts, working through your weaknesses, working through your traumas, and bringing these things to light. And that is what real self love looks like. It comes from within, and you kind of have this energy that is pouring out from the inside out, that cannot be stopped because your love for yourself is so strong. And I really believe that self-love is the only way to really understand love, because we get into relationships with people sometimes, and we say that we love our partners, but that love comes with expectations. A lot of the times we say, oh, I'll love you if you do this for me, or if you love me back, or if you validate me. Like, we get into relationships a lot because we want someone to make us feel loved, but that's not real love, that's fear.
yeah, and it's also conditional, which is
Mhm.
not that's not really what we're seeking. We're really seeking something that's unconditional.
Yeah, and, like, when you do get into that conditional love, you start getting it's easier to get attached to people, so when that thing is taken away from you, when you go through a breakup, that's why you're so heartbroken. You're like, "Well, a part of me that is now missing," because you were using that person, that relationship to fill your void.
Yeah, yeah. Although I think there is something real to when you really miss a person. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not always just a void. Breaking up can be hard.
Yeah, breakups can be
Especially a
hard.
loss. Absolutely. Um, I guess that could be a whole separate conversation, but
Yeah.
I think there's a huge misconception. People often confuse or they conflate interdependence and codependence. And
Mm.
interdependence is actually a fundamental component of a very healthy relationship. You
Mhm.
don't want to be so separate that you're not intertwined, but you don't want to be codependent on each other. And so
Mhm.
when you feel that void, there's an element of that is very real. You're interdependent on that person, and that is a huge part of your life if it's a healthy partnership. Then there is the other side, somebody who's codependent and they feel like they've just lost a part of themselves because in a way they have part of their identity
Mhm.
has been stripped from them. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you have two separate identities as individuals, and then you have this union identity together. And I feel like you have to be able to be by yourself first before coming together, and when both partners are able to do that, that's when you can create a beautiful relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you feel like there's an element of the fitness journey that teaches you about yourself and how to make yourself whole to engage in relationship with others, whether it be
Yeah.
romantic otherwise? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like this personal development journey is a journey to finding finding things within ourselves that will make us whole and complete, because I mean, I believe we were already born whole and complete, but with societal conditioning we have been taught to maybe cover up parts of ourselves because we're afraid that the world is going to not accept us. So I think it's really coming back to who we are at the core so that we can go back to that whole and complete version of ourselves. And that is the best place to be if you want to get into a relationship, because when you are whole and complete on your own, then that's when you can go into a relationship really with the intention that you want to give to this other person, instead of always thinking, what can I get out of this?
Right.
And you can really pour that love into the other person without expectations of getting anything in return. But the irony is that when you do give so much, you will get it in return.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really true. Yeah. So I want to just, you said that when you had an eating disorder when you first went into your fitness journey.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's very intertwined with this notion of self-love, or lack thereof, right?
hmm
What how did you heal yourself, and how did you transition to a much healthier relationship with yourself and with fitness and, yeah, body image and all of that? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd have to talk about why this happened in the first
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
so yeah, I went through a period where I was really just hating everything in my life. I was a little bit depressed, a little bit anxious, and that was the period when I just lost my mom. So when I was 16, my mom passed away from cancer. And at this point, my dad was already in jail. So my dad is still in jail at this point. He had been in jail for, I don't know how many years now, like 5, 6 years, but
Ask for what?
for his business. So he's actually in jail in China because his business is
Wow.
in China.
Are
So
you from China?
I was originally, and then when I was like 10, yeah, like when I was like 10, 11, my mom brought my brother and I here, and I haven't been back since since
Okay.
then. But my dad stayed back in China for business, and when I was 16, I lost my mom, and I was forced to become that that kind of caretaker role in my life. And my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, I had to take care of him too. So after I lost my mom, I really got down this path of wanting to control everything in my life because I had lost control. And that was something that I was afraid of. I was afraid of losing control because I realized that there is so much that is out of my control. And losing my mom, it was something that, I mean, I didn't see it coming that quickly. Like, I knew she had cancer for 6 years, but I didn't know that it was like it was going to end that quickly. So I lost control in my life, and I was just using, every opportunity to hold on to control. And it started off with controlling my body and controlling my food and how I exercise. And that is why I got that eating disorder, because I realized, well, the only thing that I can control right now is how I look and how I present myself to other people. So I decided that I wanted to lose like 30 pounds. So I started going to the gym and started working out, doing cardio and doing all that. And it just got down this very unhealthy pattern where I was eating like 800 calories a day to lose weight, and doing like 3 hours of cardio at the gym every day. And eventually it became like not sustainable, to the point where there was this one day I remember just like waking up in the morning, driving somewhere, and almost passing out behind the wheel because I was just so hungry, and I think my blood sugars were so low. And yeah, I got to a point where I was like very skinny. I got to like 120 pounds, and I'm 5'7", so that is like tiny.
Yeah.
um so after that, I decided that it it was no longer sustainable, and I didn't want to live my life like this anymore. So
was it that moment where you almost passed out in the car? Was that like a turning point for you? What was a turning point for you?
it was a little bit after that actually.
Okay.
So I, I was in a relationship back then, and my boyfriend at the time actually saw all of these habits going on, and he a few months after that encouraged me to start lifting weights because he was very into weightlifting. So he was like, well, why don't you just try it out instead of, starving yourself and doing cardio all the time? Why don't you try lifting some weights? And I was resistant to it at first because I thought, like, why would I add another piece to this when I'm already doing so much? Why would I want to do more?
Right.
But I realized that once I started really getting into lifting, I could stop doing as much cardio. And I slowly started eating more, and it just became this thing where I dived very deep into fitness. I just wanted to learn everything about fitness and nutrition and how to really live a balanced lifestyle. But, on the other side of that, I had an obsession then with fitness and with
Right.
nutrition.
Okay.
So took it to the other extreme where I was going to lift like 7 days a week, no rest days. Um, I was tracking my calories like to the gram, and I was just being obsessive with it. And it took a while for me to find this balanced point where I'm not starving myself and I'm going to the gym and eating healthy, but I'm also not obsessing over that because that can also get very unhealthy. And I think that was the other side of my eating disorder where I only allowed myself to eat foods that were cooked, weighed, and tracked by myself. I'm pretty sure that's an eating disorder in and of itself. So it just, yeah, it's all about finding that balance in your life and, like enjoying life sometimes because life is so short. So why, put yourself in a position where you're so strict all the time and not enjoy your life?
If you're miserable all the time, what is the point, right? What's the end goal there? So what
Mhm.
was the turning point there? How did you even recognize what you were doing, or were you just caught up in it? Like, did you realize that this was not a healthy pattern, or were you in denial, or did you realize it and then it took something to snap you out of it?
I was in denial for sure. I I didn't listen to anybody and I just wanted to do my thing at the gym and track my food all the time and I thought it was healthy. Like I thought that was healthy eating and
Or-
healthy living. Um and then I started actually seeing a therapist for grief, for getting through my mom's death, and I was telling her about all this and she actually pointed it out. Then she says, "Oh, it sounds like you are developing this kind of obsessive behavior with your food." And I was telling her, I was like, "There's no way. This is healthy eating. This is what you're supposed to do." And then, I mean, like she planted that thought kind of in my head, even though I didn't believe it at first.
yeah.
A couple weeks later, I realized that my strength at the gym was just going down and I was just so tired all the time and I even lost my appetite and and that was something that made me start questioning what is going on because my purpose, for going to the gym is to get stronger, is to feel good about myself. But every single time after a workout, I was just fatigued and I would have to take a nap after every workout. And I was trying to figure out why. And I started doing some research and I realized that I was actually overtraining myself. And that is when I came across the idea of overtraining. And that's actually a thing when you go to the gym and don't take rest days and when you don't eat anything else. And I mean, like my calories are still pretty low at the point. Like even after my eating disorder, at that point, I was eating probably like 1,800 calories a day. So I feel like it was still low for a person my size.
Sure. And for that activity level, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so after I realized I was overtraining, it it pushed me out of my comfort zone to finally take a rest day from the gym. Like it sounds
It's tough at first. Yeah.
yeah, I was so resistant to the idea of taking a rest day. I was like, if I take a rest day, I'm gonna lose all my progress. But I decided to just take like 3 or 4 days off completely, like force myself to do it. And I realized after I went back to the gym, I actually got stronger. And
Like, whoa, what is this? I didn't lose everything in 3 days.
yeah, so I'm like, well, the rest it was worth it then. Like it just showed me that I was actually overtraining, and rest is important for recovery. So that's when I started realizing that there is this balance point in the middle where I can enjoy my life, I can take rest days, and I can eat a little bit more than, 1800 calories a day. Like nowadays, I mean, I don't even track that often anymore, but I feel like I eat like around 2,500 calories a day, which is like normal for a person my size.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I always say that I mean, there is overtraining, but I think the majority of what happens is under recovery.
Mhm.
And, that's people who are not matching their rest to their training. They're not matching their nutrition to their training. They're not matching their lifestyle to their training. If you train, go that hard, you need to recover that hard too.
Yeah,
I think that's the component.
yeah,
So
like rest is like the crucial part I feel like of building muscle anyway. Like you're
yeah,
not building muscle in the gym.
no, you're tearing them. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're tearing them down. Yeah, they don't rebuild unless you let them rest and recover. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
for sure. So, how did you start to heal from that? How did you start to find some balance? Like what, I get that, you took those 3 days and that was kind of a light bulb moment. Oh, wait, recovery is actually
Mhm.
important and I am actually stronger now. But then I would imagine it probably wasn't like overnight that you're like, okay, I can just find this perfect balance. Right?
Yeah, balance is it's hard, to find. I feel like in life with anything, if we're out of balance, there will be a problem. And I think a lot of our lives is trying to find the balance point between extremes. And finding that balance point was kind of like pushing myself out of my comfort zone to actually try new things and to try actually eating out for once, and try enjoying myself a little bit more. And it was a long process. Like this is not something that was done overnight. I'd say probably like another 6 months after that is where I really found that balance where it didn't feel guilty anymore for eating out. So when I didn't feel guilty for taking rest days anymore. So it's just like with anything, the more you do it, the better it's gonna get. It's like training a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it's gonna get. And with finding balance, it gets easier over time. So just keep on practicing.
For sure. No, absolutely. And it's always a journey, right? Like, do you feel like you have days or moments where the old patterns start to, default, or you feel like that it's harder to stay in balance?
Nowadays, not anymore because I have been out of that for a long time. But before, when I was on that recovery journey, yeah, like there were days where I would just get really upset at myself because I took a rest day, or if I went out with friends, I'd get really upset. So yeah, you do fall back into these old patterns because they have been there for so long. But if you just keep on going with it, it's eventually gonna stick. It's like reprogramming your brain, and the more the more you do it, like it all comes down to repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill, and you keep on doing it again and again, and eventually you get to a point where you feel comfortable with that balance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's such a good lesson in general. I think people expect all types of progress to be this
Mhm.
linear path. And, that's usually not the case. I would say it's almost never the case. Usually it's a little bit more like rolling hills, and then we eventually you get there. But it's not a straight, narrow path. So
For sure. It's consistency with everything.
for sure. For sure. So you immigrated here from China. Do you speak Chinese?
I can't do it that much anymore. I do understand. So when people talk to me, I will understand, but I can't really get my head around the grammar and all that stuff anymore.
Right, sure. And how old were you?
I was like 10,
Okay.
10, about to turn 11, I think.
Okay. I'm curious just about like the transition, like, and how you feel about you're a citizen now. You're an American citizen.
Not yet.
Oh no. Okay. Do you
I'm a
or
permanent, I have a green card. Like,
okay.
so I'm a permanent resident, but I'm not a citizen yet because I think you have to be I think there's a thing where you have to be like a permanent resident for a certain amount of
Sure.
years
Totally.
before become
Yep.
a citizen. Yeah, so something like that, but eventually.
That's the goal. Yeah. Awesome. Um, so I'm curious with you're talking about like consistency and habits, and how do you feel like you're in San Diego, which you didn't get as much of a lockdown, like you kind of went in and out of lockdowns, right? Like gyms were open for part of that.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
the majority of COVID, I was in LA. So I moved to San Diego like
Oh,
2 months ago. Yeah, like about
okay.
2 months ago. So I was in LA and we were all shut down.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. You're in Santa Monica. So yeah, so talk to me a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on like, the lockdown, your personal experience, your experience with clients, and just transitioning and how adapting. Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning of lockdown, I decided to purchase some equipment. So I got like a set of resistance bands. I actually found a barbell on Facebook Marketplace. So
Oh, you were a lucky one.
yeah, I found a barbell for like $50, which was
Yeah,
insane.
you really lucked out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a
That's
barbell,
the
got
black
my
market stuff, you know?
yeah. I still have it. I think I'm gonna sell it. It's like sitting over there in my apartment right now.
Oh, wow. I might
But
use that.
yeah,
We'll talk
but
later.
yeah, but it's like I realized that I wanted to obviously keep on making some progress, if not just like maintain my progress.
Yeah.
Um, so I got my resistance bands, I got the barbell, I got a set of 20-pound dumbbells. So those were all the things that I had. And I just like started doing home workouts. And I know a lot of people didn't even have access to these things, which, like I am extremely blessed that I was able to find all these things.
Totally.
And I have heard people, like some of my friends were like using gallons of water and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Like
I
we have
definitely did.
used everything.
Yeah, which I think I thought was amazing to see how creative people got with things. And I also thought it was really interesting to see, you know, I was actually just talking to someone about this morning, that for very specific goals, you need to train. I mean, if you're a football player, you need to play football.
Hmm.
If you run the 200-yard, you need to do that,
Right.
But I think for most people, if they're looking for, health, fitness, they want to look good, they want to feel good. For you can really do a lot. Like, it doesn't have to be in a gym. There's actually, you can get a lot of benefit. And I think that some people get very caught in this very narrow kind of mindset of, I have to be in a specific place to do a
Mm.
workout. I have to have certain equipment. And again, if you're trying to you're doing something that's sport specific, you need that equipment. But were you surprised by how much you could do just in your space with what you had?
Yeah, so actually, I at the beginning of lockdown, I did have the mindset of oh, like I can't make my progress now. There's no gym, but the really interesting thing was when I started doing these home workouts, since in the gym, like I was so stuck in my routine. I was always doing my same like couple exercises, my same routine. When I switched up my routine, I actually made more progress at the beginning because of that new like
Newness.
yeah, of that like newness.
Newness.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually made a lot of progress in the beginning, which was very interesting, that you can still make progress at home because you're doing something different than what you were doing before. And I think a lot of people get stuck in their routines and they don't want to change things up, but it doesn't hurt sometimes to do something different and see how your body responds to that. And I feel like another thing is just having a mindset that is adaptable to different things. And this goes back to control. Like I had a crazy control issue when I first started controlling my body, and then I started controlling my business when my body was out of the picture. And after I stopped controlling my business, realized that that didn't work. I started controlling my future, making my 5-year plans. And when things didn't go according to my plan, I would be super upset. And with 2020, the biggest thing that I've learned is that your plan might not work, and you have to be okay with that. And I had a lot of plans at the beginning of 2020, and with COVID happening and everything shut down, none of my plans went according to what I had planned them to be. And at first I was getting really upset, but the biggest lesson was that life is always going to be changing, and you can't control things outside of yourself. The only thing that you have control over is your reaction to things and how you respond to a situation. So you can be the person who sits there and gets upset when things shut down, and you're now giving up on your fitness goals and you're just angry all the time. Or you can have this adaptable mentality where you try to control your own situation and try to make things work around what is happening in the outside world, because we don't have control over the outside world.
Yeah. Was that really freeing to have that kind of revelation?
Yeah, I I have been on this journey to let go of control for the past 4 years since my mom passed away. So it has been a journey for sure, but I can say that I'm finally getting to a point where I no longer feel the need to control anything at all. And I don't I don't get upset anymore when things don't go according to my plan. And I think this goes a little bit into, the spirituality side. When you just fully surrender, you fully trust that things are going to be taken care of. You trust that no matter what happens, the universe will have your back. Then that's when you fully surrender and you fully give up control, because you realize that you, first of all, don't have control a lot over a lot of things, but also you don't have to, because the universe is taking care of you regardless.
So I really want to address this because I think this is interesting. Like, I think people tend to fall into, just as human beings, we're very binary creatures. People who are,
Mhm.
everything's black and white. That's just easier for people to handle. That
Mhm.
notion of it's either this way or this way. And usually things in life are a lot more nuanced than that, right?
Mhm.
um, so when you say, like things aren't in your control and you need to relinquish, and the universe has your back. Now, I know you don't mean that means we sit back, we do nothing, and we're just going to be taken care of, right? But I think some people, it's hard for people to really adjudicate between taking total control and planning, micromanaging every little thing, and doing their very detailed plans, and just sitting back and totally letting go. So, where is that balance, and what does that mean to trust that the universe has your back? And it's still, that you still have some power, you still have some control, because otherwise that can be terrifying too, right? To just totally give up all of your power.
Right. So, I mean, it comes down to finding that balance point. If you're on one extreme, it seems like you have a problem in your life, and life gets really difficult when you're on these extremes. So, it's not about giving up control completely. I think it's more about finding what it is that you do have control over, because most of the time I feel like we're trying to control things that we cannot control, and we start getting upset because other people are doing certain things, and like we like to control other people, and we like to play the victim and and say that it's not our fault and blame everything on everybody else. That's what we like to do. We like to control people. But we have to start realizing that we only have control over our reactions and ourselves, and taking that responsibility for ourselves instead of blaming everybody else for how things are going. Really look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what is our role here? And that is what we have control over. And when it comes to surrendering and letting the universe take over, you have to understand that this entire thing, your life and manifestation of everything, is a co-creation process. If you try to be the creator like entirely and take the universe out of the equation, you just want to go your own way, your life is going to be really difficult because you're going to get stuck in this cycle of you constantly think that you have to work so hard to achieve what you want. But if you also just sit back and, when people try to manifest things, they're just like, oh, the universe is going to bring it to me, I'm going to sit on the couch. It also doesn't work like that. So it is a co-creation process. You do your part and then let the universe take the rest.
I so love that. I love that. I think that's so powerful. And I think that is really, I think that is a really tough thing for people to reconcile. And I think that that's where people really find peace and success, is knowing that they have to do the work. And I love what you were saying about, we like to play victim. And I talk about this a lot. I think that it's almost become trendy to be a victim. And it's something I find truly abhorrent. I have such disdain for it. And not even because I look down on, somebody who plays victim, but it's more because I think it's so damaging to the psyche. It takes we're such powerful beings, just human beings. We're incredibly powerful. We don't have control over everything, but we have tremendous capabilities. And I think to, look at things as if we have zero control, and to play that victim and blame things on other people instead of recognizing the things that we do have control over, seizing those things and recognizing that those are parts of our gifts.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like the biggest lesson that I've had to learn is just whenever something happens in my life, I'm going to turn inward and look at myself instead of looking at how everybody else hurt me. Look at what was my role here. And I'm going to give an example of, with relationships in the past where my relationships didn't work out. There was a point in my life where I was blaming the other person for how things didn't work out. And I was saying, well, only if he did this would have been good. But I had to realize that it's both of us. We both needed to look inward at ourselves. So when you go into a relationship, you can create that environment when it's safe for both of you. Because if you constantly have the mentality of, well, this other person should be doing this, and if you have the mentality of what can I get out of the situation, and how can I make other people do certain things to make me happy, that's when you're going to be very unhappy, because people, first of all, do not like to be controlled. They're going to start walking away. But also you don't have control over people, and you're just going to keep on getting frustrated because people are not doing things the way that you want them to. But if you just look at yourself and control your reactions and manage your part, just do your part, that is when the relationships will get a lot better and you find a lot of peace from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always talk about how I feel like movement is such a, good teacher and metaphor for life. And I think a lot of it is for this reason that you're talking about, like with relationship. When you approach like some sort of a physical feat, there you have this whole, even just in that one feat, you have such a journey of emotions. And I think that that's such a great metaphor for how you handle. But the difference is that you can lash out on, the barbell, the floor, whatever it is,
Mhm.
but they're not going to respond, right? You can't control them. You can only control how you approach it, and what you do in that moment. And I think that that's a really good teacher, because you start with that. And then when you do have another person that you're interacting with, they're going to bring, all of their baggage and
Mm-hmm.
emotionality and circumstances to the table, and then you deal with that. But it's if you can start with recognizing how you deal with it when it's your own journey, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you do get angry because other people are not doing things the way that you want them to, realize that when you get angry in that moment, you have lost your own power because you're letting something outside of yourself anger you. And you're saying someone else has the power over you to now change how you feel. So if you can keep down your own anger and keep your own emotions in check and have control over your own emotions, that is where the real power is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's really interesting in the current climate. I think a lot of people are feeling very frustrated, angry. Um, certainly I think people were feeling that way with things being shut down. People couldn't work. A lot of people couldn't work. Some people were able to adapt and shift. But there's a feeling of being out of control. And then certainly right now we're in a very heated kind of climate, and people are, so what is your advice to people? How do you deal with that? There's a reality of sometimes we get angry about things, and we can sit back and say, okay, maybe I can react to this differently, and there's no reason for me to really be angry. Sometimes there are things that really are maddening. And you have every right to be angry. And I think sometimes anger is healthy. You can channel it, right? So what is your advice to people? How do you guide them through that?
Yeah, so I mean, you have every right to feel whatever it is that you want to feel. If you want to rage, if you want to like hit a pillow, do that. And
Yeah,
you know, emotions are really there to show us different things. Like if you start getting angry, like feel it out and don't don't let it get stuck in you, because I feel like a misconception is like people think that you have to be happy all the time or
right.
else you yeah, or else you're gonna manifest something that you don't want. Like that's what a lot of people think, but you have to be able to feel it out because emotions are just energies in motion. If you don't let that energy pass through you, it builds up inside of you, and one day someone is going to trigger you and you're going to lash out and you're going to dump everything that you have been holding on to for the past like 5 years onto somebody else who had nothing to do with it. So it's important to let that energy flow through, but understand that once you have felt it out, don't stay there. Like if you're getting angry over something, don't stay there and don't stay in this consistent place of anger, and figure out why you were angry in the first place. And I would really look at, now after I have felt that out, after I have sat with it, now what can I do to create a solution instead of, sitting there pitying yourself, playing the victim. Feel it out and then move forward with your life and figure out what is the next step that you can take to now try to get yourself out of this situation. So I think it's just important to not stay there, but you have every right to feel whatever it is that you want to feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really powerful. Really well said.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
You're welcome. I want to ask you, so you do both fitness coaching and life coaching, right?
hmm
Do you do them like together, or you work with people more separately on both, or?
So I have two separate programs. One is just for like playing fitness, nutrition. I mean, we obviously work on mindset because that's a big component of it.
Right, yep.
Yeah, but it's more for like your physical body. We want to lose some fat, build muscle, all that type of stuff. And then the other program is for women to manifest and attract their dream relationships. And that is by working on your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So when we do work on these areas, we end up attracting somebody else who also has their stuff in check. Because I think, like we attract exactly what we are. So in my past relationships, I can look back and say that the reason that I didn't have a partner that I wanted was because I wasn't even there yet, and I I attracted the same behaviors that I had within myself. So the moment I started pulling the focus onto myself and looking at how I'm able to change myself to become that best version of me, to become really the woman of my own dreams, like that is what really then made me manifest and attract the partner that is right for me, because then I brought in someone who was also doing the work on himself, and he became the man of his own dreams before before we then came together. So I think the most powerful thing that you can do is pull the focus onto yourself, so that you let almost the universe deliver that person to you when you are ready. So that is what I help women with in my other program. It's called Magnetic Attractor.
I love it. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank
Very
you.
cool. Yeah. And I think that there's such a synergy, between the two. You're working on because right, we're mental, physical, spiritual beings, right? There's not we're not one or the other. The age old Cartesian dualism is we've disproven that, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything is like interconnected. If you don't have like one of these areas in check, I feel like you're like out of alignment. And what we really want is to have all these areas like equally in check, because you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I feel like a lot of people talk a lot about working on your weaknesses. And I actually feel very much the opposite. I always say, like, not that you should neglect your weaknesses, but your weaknesses, I personally think, are never going to be your strengths. So, sometimes we, kind of like lose the forest for the trees, and we get so focused on our weaknesses and we lose our strengths, which I believe are our gifts. Those are the things that make us unique and special, are the things that we do well. And those things should be harnessed, because then you could really fly. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe definitely focus on your strength instead of, trying to focus all your time on turning your weaknesses into strengths. I really believe that we have different strengths for different reasons. Like we're here to do different things, but when it comes to your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness, you can't neglect your weaknesses. Like even if you don't spend all your time working on your weaknesses and bringing that into strength, you still can't neglect one area. So like let's say, I mean, even in your life, like let's say you're so focused on your business, like your strength is your business, and that's the only thing that you ever want to do, and you neglect your weaknesses. Maybe it's your emotional side and your relationships. You kind of don't have a life that is in balance. So I think it's also just coming back to that balance point
Yeah.
where there isn't like an extreme or the other.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a balance is tough. It's tough to walk the line. Right?
Mhm.
I was a gymnast. I literally think of, like, the balance beam.
Oh,
Balance beam is really
yeah.
tough. It's
Yeah.
finding, and so much of like even just walking on a balance beam was really about having that uh, pulling all your extremes together. It really was. You had to be centered. People think of balance beam as being like this very delicate thing. I think that's kind of the perception of it externally,
Mhm.
watching it, and it is. It's beautiful, but it is actually not. It's very grounded, and
Mhm.
that's your anchor. You have to be very connected to it. You have to be very rooted. And most of that balance comes from the midline. It comes from the core. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that it's a perfect metaphor, because I think that's really true in everything. You have to find the center in order to find balance.
I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or definitely tell people where they can find you? But yeah,
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your
you're
show.
welcome.
I enjoyed this conversation a lot. And I think I'll just leave everyone with this one last thing, and it's that when you are trying to find this balance in your life, it's not going to be comfortable. Like whatever you are working on in your life, you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And even if you don't want to do it, life has a way of making you step out of that comfort zone. Because if you are always comfortable, you will never grow. Because if we are just always sitting there, why would we ever want to step out of that comfort zone? So life has a way of throwing things at you and taking things away that are not serving your highest purpose. So just be okay with that happening, and be okay with being uncomfortable, and know that in the midst of that uncomfortability, you are making the most growth, and there's a lot of beauty in the darkness. And yeah, and where people can find me, I mostly hang out on Instagram at Maggie Dong _. I have a podcast called Mind Muscle Enlightenment, where we just talk about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness. And my coaching programs, I have the fitness coaching, that's Confidently Lean, and Magnetic Attractor is for attracting your dream relationships.
I love it. And I want to end with that you're talking about getting out of your comfort zone and how there can be growth there. That's just the perfect analogy, is when you were talking about how when the lockdown happened and you actually found so much progress because you were doing something different, but it was really uncomfortable. You were used to being in your routine and you wouldn't have stepped out of it if you hadn't been forced to. And that's where you found progress, because it wasn't what you were used to doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was so great. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.